Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon from Paris. I'm going to speak about offsets in Europe and tell you what I think as a chairman of the European Club for Countertrade and Offsets. I've been doing international business for 40 years and offsets for 15 years. A lot has changed in that time. The EU's aim has always been to build up solidarity between member states and seek reciprocity with third countries. What is the situation today? First of all, the law states that whether applied to civil or defense government procurement contracts, indirect offsets are illegal at both member states and EU level. Direct offsets are illegal on a national scale, but optional on an EU scale. I would also like to introduce offsets for civil contracts. In particular, in EU primary law, Article 18 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, the TFEU, prohibits both indirect and direct offsets at national level, in other words, member level. One exception is Article 346 TFEU concerning the protection of the essential interest of a member state's security. In a secondary law, regulation directives, there are two directives. One applicable to civil markets, Directive 2004/17 EC, also known as the Utility Directive, which allows direct offsets on an EU scale. And another applicable to the defense market, Directive 2009/81 EC, which allows direct offsets on an EU scale also. This latter directive has two objectives: to integrate defense and security in the internal market, to create an harmonized framework. Go to slide 4, please. So, offsets are an exception to EU primary law. Due to their local content or local subcontracting requirements, offsets are contrary to one of the most fundamental principles of the EU treaties, namely non-discrimination on grounds of nationality. EU law also makes provision for exceptions, one of them being the protection of a member state's essential security interest specified in Article 346 of the TFEU. Move to slide 5, please. Consequently, in practice, on civil markets, none of the EU member states enforces offset requirements. On defense markets, the majority implement offset laws and justify this by Article 346 TFEU. This directive gives specific rules adapted to complex and sensitive procurement, strikes a balance between security interest and treaty principles, gives a set of rules for defense and sensitive security procurement. Move to slide 6, please. The European Commission expressed its views on the interpretation of Article 346 in a legally non-binding guidance note on offsets, issued as an interpretative note to the directive. First, this note states that the directive cannot authorize, tolerate, or regulate offsets as they are contrary to EU primary law. which explains why they are not mentioned explicitly. Secondly, and more importantly, the EC states that offset requirements cannot systematically be justified by Article 346, since this article is actually an exception. Go to slide 7, please. Whether civil or defense market related, EU secondary law does not seem so opposed to offset-like practices, as long as they are no longer implemented at national level, but at EU level. In other words, member states are not allowed to request local content or localization on their soil from any foreign company, especially companies from other member states. But they are allowed to request local content in any member state and therefore in the EU. Go to slide 8, please. On defense markets, Directive 2009/81/EC allows member states to require a minimum subcontracting amount which is put at a maximum of 30%, as long as the competition for subcontracts is open to any company regardless of its nationality. But the directive does not explicitly mention that such competition can be open to EU companies only. Move to slide 9, please. For civil contracts, government procurement market rules are coordinated at EU level by Directive 2004/17/EC. Its Article 58 authorizes a public awarding entity to reject an offer where the EU content is lower than 50%. Go to slide 10. To sum up, instead of talking about offsets at member state level, we now have to consider European offsets where indirect offsets are totally prohibited, direct offsets are not obligatory but can be used by certain member states for localization only. As far as civil markets are concerned, the directive allows a minimum of 50% localization in the EU. And in the case of defense markets, it allows contracting parties to request up to 30% localization at the most. Of course, these requirements can normally only apply to countries outside the EU. Go to slide 11, please. In other words, both directives encourage member states to think European rather than just national, as the non-discrimination principle does not apply to non-EU countries. These directives undeniably imply a change of mindset and traditional ways of doing. Go to slide 11, please. Go to slide 12. After consulting with the people in charge of the Commission, I can state that all member states have now transposed Directive 2009/81/EC into law in their respective countries. The European Court of Justice has stated that derogation under Article 346 TFEU is limited to exceptional and clearly defined cases. Contracts may still be awarded directly if Article 346 TFEU can be duly invoked. But whether all the conditions are met or not can now be subject to judicial review. To date, no official action has been taken against countries in breach of Article 346 TFEU. Go to slide 13, please. As yet, we have no statistics indicating the percentage of contracts managed under Article 346 in relation to total defense spending. What I can say is that offset practices should be severely cut back, as the declarations by the European Court of Justice indicate. The Commission thinks it will be able to make a preliminary estimate at the end of 2015. One thing is sure: consistent rules, the transition to a single set of regulations, and the desire to have a consistent European domestic market are all steps in the right direction and should improve the quality of government procurement tenders quite considerably. The number of offset requests should shrink away to nothing, resulting in a fair market. Slide 14. In cases where Article 346 is applied, I think we will find three different levels with different procurement conditions. That being so, indirect offsets should have completely disappeared. Level 1, member states with a strong defense industry, as Germany, United Kingdom, Italy, France. Article 346 will be applied for all programs and contracts should be placed on an OTC basis. I think it will be no offsets. Level 2, member states with a moderately strong defense industry, as Spain, the Netherlands, Poland, Sweden, maybe some more. No visibility on what they intend to do until late 2015. And level 3, the member states with a weak defense industry, which concern the other 20 other member states. Offsets will probably continue to be applied. Slide 15, please. As far as the civil market is concerned, the Commission has already proposed several draft reforms of Directive 2004/17 EC, but each time there was disagreement between the countries in the north and south of Europe, and the different plans were postponed. This was followed by actions to establish a principle of reciprocity in international relations, which, in my opinion, are very likely to continue. This is a principle of openness, not a protectionist measure, which results in mutually beneficial partnership agreements such as free trade agreement. Move to the slide 16, please. The two proposals being examined are these. The first measure would be to give awarding entities the possibility of rejecting bids from non-EU countries if more than 50% of the products proposed originate is a non-EU country. The second measure, which would apply to contracts worth more than 5 million euros, would allow the European Commission to approve or condemn the awarding entity's decision to reject a bid before the decision was actually enforced. Move to slide 17. I will end this presentation by saying that I firmly believe the ongoing free trade agreement negotiations with the US give us a unique opportunity to make our government procurement markets fair, loyal, and transparent. Rather than argue stubbornly about whether or not the proposed FTA is a good or a bad thing, we should be aware of just how much of a challenge it really is. If the negotiations succeed, Americans and Europeans will have managed to create a trailblazing mechanism to deal with the most important aspect of trade agreements in the 21st century: regulatory harmonization. Never before has there been a similar agreement between two partners of comparable economic weight, and this is probably the road we should be going down. Thank you.